Hey, it's me, Rashid. I'm an anthropologist and sociologist. Hit the like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel, become a member of the channel, and don't forget, donate the links below. Quick message. There is no such thing as waterproof propaganda. All propaganda is to trick and push someone to side with an outcome. That's all propaganda is. When you propagate something, there's an outcome you're aiming for, and you want others to side with your outcome so that when the outcome happens, others will not resist the outcome. For example, let's say you're a businessman and you and some other businessmen plan to build a mall somewhere in a small town. But here's the thing, to build that small mall over there, you'd have to remove some of the park that a lot of people go to. So you have to sacrifice a little bit of the park to build the mall and the parking lot. And another thing, once the mall is there, it's going to attract a lot of people from other places to come there. So if you just get your license or permit from the government and you start building the mall, while building the mall, you may get that the locals may protest and say, hold on a minute, we never asked for this. You build this mall, we have to deal with all this sound bothering us throughout the day of the construction. And once construction is finished, now we have all these visitors, strangers coming here that we don't know. And when they're here, they're leaving behind all types of garbage and litter. So the people may rightfully turn on the whole project. Now, because you don't want to start a project and now you have to, let me say, abandon the project because of resistance, you begin to propagate for them all. You may spread leaflets about new shoe brands, or you may spread leaflets about economic growth. You are going to promote the alleged benefits of having a mall there without mentioning the mall itself. For example, let's say you spread pamphlets around, or you have actors walking through the neighborhoods wearing the most fanciest clothes available. Eventually, the public will develop a liking for the fancy clothes and all the luxury items. But then people can take on the money. We have to travel kilometers away to get these items. And people can realize, on the minute, we want these items over here because they look good, they're nice, but we have to go very far to get them. And then someone would say, wouldn't it be better if we could get all these products nearby? And little by little, you push people towards the idea, let's have a mall over here where we can get all our luxury stuff locally. Or it can be, for example, that you send people into a small town and you talk about all the other cities where criminality amongst the youth is low. And which community doesn't want that? Low to almost no criminality. But if you keep spreading this information, which is true, people are going to ask, well, how come these other cities have such low criminality amongst the youth? And then, once people begin to ask the question, you suggest onto them, well, those other cities, they have malls, they have all the urban life concentrated in one area. So you don't tell them we should get the mall, because once we get the mall, the criminality amongst the youth will go away. You're not going to say that because you can't guarantee that. But the thing is, by mentioning that having malls around, you can concentrate urban life. By concentrating urban life, you have more social control. This will sound good to the public. And eventually, because of this, people will be more open to the idea of having a mall around. Now, you were not aiming at solving crime. You were not aiming at luxury items. You just wanted the mall to be there. Now, again, for you to just go out there, get your permit and build the mall, most likely you'll get resistance from the public, and even if the mall is finished, it may be boycotted or they may arrest visitors coming. You don't want any of that. You want the public to get along with the outcome you want. Now, if the outcome you want is a good one, then you may say, why use propaganda? Why not just say what the outcome is? Truth being told, a lot of people out there don't want solutions. They just want to escape and be at ease. And solutions require dedication and commitment from the people for things to be better. There's no solution without commitment from the people for things to be better. So, if you want, for example, that people work less hours and spend more time with family, well, people working less hours and spend more time with family, that's a good outcome, will benefit the community objectively. But the thing is, if people are so invested in working full time all the time, how are you going to get them to give this up? You can't make them give it up. You have to suggest onto them over and over again how beneficial it would be if they would work less hours and spend more time with family. But here's another hurdle. Do people even care about the relatives and the people around them? You would expect that they do care about people around them, but what if they don't? So, you having a good outcome in mind, which is objectively good for the community, doesn't guarantee that the community, the people there will work with you. They might even resist you. So sometimes even people who have good ideas, with good intentions, resort to propaganda to push people towards the outcome. And you know what? Is that always wrong? No. Because, truth being told, without propaganda, a lot of stuff you see around you would have never existed. A lot of the stuff you see around you in daily life wouldn't, ex- wouldn't exist. Not even the English language would exist if it wasn't for propaganda. If it wasn't for propaganda, you wouldn't have a British Empire that became dominant, and you wouldn't have the English language as a spoken language worldwide right now. However, propaganda is often used for bad stuff, for exploitation. Because here's the thing, good outcomes, actually good outcomes or solutions, you can be open about it. And when you're open about it, people don't comply, it's up to the people now for, for things not getting better. But if you have a bad outcome in mind, you just want to take advantage of people, or you just want to you just don't want to take responsibility for what goes on, that's not something you can communicate with people. How are you going to communicate with people in a safe and accepting way that you just want to take things from them and you're not concerned with them at all? Or you just don't want to deal with responsibility at all? How are you going to communicate that? There's no way to communicate that and not get in trouble with other people. So, you have to resort to trickery to get this outcome. And propaganda can also become blackmail. Not all propaganda is blackmail, but propaganda can easily become blackmail. Okay, let me give an example. Let's go back to the example of the mall. You want to have a mall there in a town. The thing is, in the town, you have various shops over there. You have bakeries, you have a Chinese shop, you have a tailor working there. So you have all these shops in the town. If you build a mall and the mall has 200 shops, for example, that means that the local shops will likely go out of business because the majority of people that will visit that town will go to the mall. But here's the thing, if you inform the public openly that if you build a mall, urban life is concentrated at the mall, that means that all the other shops may likely close. If you tell people that, do you think they're going to be happy? The business owners will not be happy. Some of the locals will think, what the heck is this? We're used to having these shops around here. So you just want to build a mall so that you and your other business partners can make money off that mall, but you're not concerned with the local community. In this case, you're in the wrong and your motives are evil. So one thing you would one thing you can do is that you accuse the locals of being backwards, saying, you guys are backwards, you guys are still holding on to the 1960s, 1970s, or you guys are not willing to move forward, you guys hold on to the past. Now, even if these things were true, why are you mentioning them? You're mentioning them to make them feel bad about themselves. And because nobody wants to be associated with backwardsness, now you trigger people not to be seen as backwards. And now you can push people towards the idea, let's build a mall over there to show that we're not backwards. Now, is having a mall proof that you're not backwards? No. Because there are many neighborhoods with malls and a lot of people there are backwards. But in this case, you used blackmail on the population. Either you made up the fact that didn't exist. Okay, you can claim that a lot of people are obese in a community, and you can show some obese people in mainstream media, social media, for propaganda purposes, even though the majority of people may not be obese, so now you made something up to make someone look bad. Or, let's say a lot of people are obese. Now, the obesity doesn't have to be only because of diet, because they have the wrong diet. It can be stress, all types of other stuff involved. It can also be that the foods they eat are not well processed, whatever. It's a whole complex situation. But you now are using the fact that a lot of people are obese to shame the people. You're not mentioning it because you're interested in solving it. You mention it to shame them, and by shaming them, you now put a stigma on them. And because this stigma will work out badly for the people do not want the stigma. So now you trigger people to do the opposite of what you said. So now people say, we want to lose weight, we want to lose weight. And then you suggest onto them, hey, if you have a mall nearby with a gym in it, you can all work out whenever you want. And now people will think, there's a solution. Now, the obesity was an issue, objectively. You calling out obesity, that's factual, that the people are obese. But why did you mention it? You only mentioned it to shame them and make them feel bad about themselves so that you would use this artificial guilt to push them towards the outcome you wanted, them accepting the existence of a mall over there. Is there a guarantee that if there's a mall with a gym in it, everyone's going to lose weight? No, absolutely not. There's no guarantee of that. But you made them think this. So the people there, they think they consented willfully to having a mall over there. However, when you look at the facts, they've been tricked through brainwashing to accept the mall. And once the mall is there, and you have all these visitors coming, and you have all this litter everywhere in the neighborhood, you have all these local shops closing, it's now that the people in the town or neighborhood are going to think, hold on a minute, how come we accepted this? People are going to wake up from the spell, because the spell is not permanent. People are going to wake up and think, how the heck did this happen? Now, people have to admit they've been tricked into getting along with this mall being established. But here's the thing, even if they admit to themselves they've been tricked, it doesn't change the fact the mall is there. What do they want to do? Break down the mall? You have hundreds of businesses located in the mall. You have police officers now who are guarding the mall. They have employment over there. So now you have people relying on that mall for their daily bread. Because there are people who have jobs there, who have families to feed. So now you have a whole system revolving around the mall. How are you going to shut down the mall right now? So them admitting they've been tricked doesn't mean they can go back to how things used to be. They can never go back to how things used to be. So often, when a population is tricked into making certain decisions, eventually they don't want to admit they've been tricked, because admitting they've been tricked also means that they have to learn to deal with a new situation. And even if they were the victim of foul propaganda, it doesn't change the fact that eventually they did collaborate with what's going on. And outsiders can always use their own collaboration against them to shut their mouth. So what a lot of people do is, once they figure out they've been tricked, they will deny it, and they will act like they always wanted the mall. Oh, this mall is here. We always want the mall over here. It was time we got the mall. It was time we got the mall with a big gym in it. Yes, with a lot of litter, but oh, those shops over there. Those shops We're antique, but you know what? We need to be modern. We need to modernize, get ahead with the time. So people begin to make up these fancy stories to hide the fact that they've been tricked into an outcome they never wanted. Now, people do this so they don't lose their mind. Because whether they like it or not, this is the new outcome. Now, again, propaganda can become blackmail, but not all propaganda is blackmail. And not all blackmail is propaganda. But propaganda can often turn into blackmail. And what I just explained on to you, it happens a lot in the world. That the public locally is tricked into agreeing and getting along with an outcome they otherwise would have never accepted. Now, it's a clever way of the world in getting things done without getting too much resistance. Now, the question is, should a believer resort to propaganda? Now, as I mentioned before, propaganda 9 out of 10 times is used for wrong purposes, or the motives are wrong. It should be that you communicate your goals and your aims with the people openly, and that you work this out with people. That's how it should be. Unfortunately, in this world, it's not always possible to communicate with people because some people simply don't want any better. Some people just want ease and to be unbothered unconditionally. They're narcissistic. So how can you communicate with narcissistic people? You cannot. You cannot communicate with narcissistic people. It's not going to happen. So if you're a believer doing the will of the Heavenly Father, you will find out sooner or later that you cannot communicate all that you do with other people. You have to learn to shut your mouth and keep certain things to yourselves, to yourself. So that also means that when you are out there doing the will of the Heavenly Father, you cannot always communicate what you're doing. You can give crumbs of information to other people when they ask what you're doing, but you can never fully tell exactly what you're doing. That is not lying, that's being realistic. That is not lying, that's being realistic, and a lot of believers are not realistic. So, are believers involved in propaganda? Yes, we are. Believers are involved in propaganda often in this world, but too often the propaganda believers are involved in are dark propaganda that doesn't benefit anyone in the long run. The only propaganda believers should be involved in is propaganda that is a necessity to complete God's will for their lives. If God wants you, for example, to become this popular and um, influential musician, then you have to remove yourself from people who don't see potential in you. Because people that don't see potential in you are going to resist your development. They may even try to take your life if you break through without their quote unquote consent. So, let's say you begin to make music. Okay? Now, you want your music to be heard. Because what's the purpose of being a musician? Nobody hears your music. Now, you know that the type of music you're making is not the type of music people are into. So now, you go to, let's say, radio stations, you pay them some money that you saved for them to play your song from time to time. And by your song being played from time to time on the radio, people get used to the song. And eventually, people begin to identify with the song. Whether they like it or dislike it doesn't matter, they begin to identify with it. And once they identify with your song, eventually you can release more songs. And before you know it, people see you as this established musician. What happened? You used propaganda. You didn't use propaganda to exploit and harm other people. You used propaganda to advance your musical career. Or let's say now you collaborate with a coffee brand. Because let's say a lot of people in a city, they love drinking coffee. They consume coffee a lot. And let's say you are making, let's say, R&B songs. But nobody around there is into R&B. Now you collaborate with this coffee brand. And they make a commercial in which you um, play a little sample of one of your R&B songs. Once this commercial is shown, Often in the community, on TV or on social media, people begin to associate your R&B production with them drinking coffee. So they begin to identify that song with coffee. The association has been established. And because it's association, without people being aware of it, they're more open up for R&B. And now you can come to the city and have a performance. Now you will have fans. Now you will become a popular musician. Look, as a believer, there's nothing wrong with using tricks to get ahead. Now we shouldn't use tricks to disadvantage other people and exploit and harm them. No, but there's nothing wrong with using tricks to get ahead. That's not lying. It is being manipulative, but manipulation doesn't have to be wrong if what you attempt to achieve is good. Of course, you should mind the methods you're using, absolutely, but manipulation in itself is not wrong. Unfortunately, in the world, manipulation is used for wrong often. That's why the word manipulation is associated with wrong often, but it's not automatically wrong. Okay? Again, I'm not advocating for believers to jump into propaganda. Propaganda should be the last resort believers use to do the will of Heavenly Father. Apart from that, no believer should be involved in any type of propaganda. Well, that's it for now. Keep on agreeing with Christ, and I'll see you in my next live stream.